Of the Ann Arbor Historic District Commission. The meeting is being held in person and electronically via Zoom. Members of the public who would like to comment on hearings or other matters may do so via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID pound 978-6401-4515. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the public notices section of the city website, and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. Ms. Thatcher, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Quijano.
Here.
Commissioner Fortner. Here. Commissioner Epperson.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Willis.
Here.
Commissioner Rockland.
Here.
Commissioner Ross. You have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. On to item C, approval of agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to tonight's agenda? Nope, none. So the agenda is approved as presented. On to item D, public comment. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about an issue that is not listed as a public hearing on this agenda. To comment on such other preservation matters, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 978-6401-4515. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand, please press *9 on your phone. Kristen, do we have any callers?
There are no callers.
Okay. I will now close public comment portion and move on to item E, unfinished business, which I believe we have no unfinished business on tonight's agenda. And on to item F, hearings. F1, 541 South Ashley. Ms. Thatcher, will you please give the staff report?
Certainly. All right. Let me shuffle here a little bit. Good. All right, 541 South Ashley is an application for solar panels on the roof of this 2-story Queen Anne in the heart of the Old West Side Historic District. Features a cut stone foundation, street-facing gable with decorative trim and shingle work, a box bay window on the front elevation, a 2-story cross gable, and a side entry porch. The house first appears in the city directory in 1894 as the home of painter Charles Heath at number 95. It is on the east side of South Ashley Street, north of West Madison and south of West Jefferson, and the applicant is seeking HDC approval to install a solar array consisting of 3 sections of black-on-black panels on the roof south and east faces. Here is the house, and the panels are not going to go where you can see in this photo, so let me go down. Let's see, this is the north-facing roof. The south-facing is on this other side. So one of the 3 sets of panels is proposed to go on this roof face right here. Another one is on this shorter sloping roof that we see in the back here. Here's a diagram. That's the shorter one in the back. And then there's a 3rd section on this roof that sheds toward the rear of the yard. They are black-on-black panels. There are 20 of them total. This is a pretty straightforward application. And the reason that it's here tonight is because it is on this front section of the house. If it were just these, it would be out of sight of the street, and I'd be able to staff approve them. But here's a better photo, another photo of that roof face. And again, these are black-on-black panels. Staff really doesn't have any issues with these. The applicant included a photo here. I'm assuming that the metering, the exterior stuff that's going to go on the house is going to be near this other electrical equipment, which is off of the driveway behind the front porch, which juts out a little bit. This is the view from the back. Here's that other roof slope that's going to get some panels And from the Secretary of the Interior's standards, number 2 says that the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alteration of features, spaces, and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. Number 9 says new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Number 10 says new additions and adjacent or related new construction will be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property will be unimpaired. Staff does believe that this application meets the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines. The guidelines for roofs from the Secretary of Interior recommend identifying, retaining, and preserving roofs that are important in defining the overall historic character of the building. And that from the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines for solar panels, it's appropriate to mount solar panels at grade or on ground pole mountings. In the absence of an appropriate ground-based mounting location, panels should be mounted on rear or side-facing roof surfaces. It's also appropriate to install service equipment on the roof related to the solar units and the related devices, so it's inconspicuous from the public right-of-way and does not damage or obscure character-defining features. So staff does recommend approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. Myself and Commissioner Ross were on the review committee. I'll start out with the report. I think this is a very straightforward application. The only visible portion of the solar panels is on that front south-facing gable. I think the way that they're depicted to be arranged is appropriate and matches our guidelines. There wasn't anybody out there to discuss the exact location of where the metering would go. I think, of course, next to the existing utilities would be the most appropriate place. Other than that, I don't have anything to add. Commissioner Ross?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the chair and agree with staff's reporting of the situation. It's a very straightforward application.
Thank you. All right, would the applicant please unmute your microphone, turn on your video if possible, and provide your name and address for the record.
Oh, wait. Hang on one second. Yeah, Elizabeth, I'm trying to promote you. Oh, there, I think Kristen got you.
Hi.
There we go.
Sorry, technical stuff.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, there was no question. This is now, you have a chance, if you'd like, for up to 5 minutes to add anything to the staff report or review committee report, or just talk about your project if you'd like to add or say anything further.
My name's Elizabeth Friedman. I'm one of the homeowners that I'm speaking for my husband, Matt, as well. We're just, we've been trying to retrofit our house to be more environmentally sustainable within the guidelines to ensure that it's ready for a good future, basically, to preserve it as well. And so I appreciate everything that Jill said. And as far as I know, the utilities will in fact be, that's where they'll be located.
Okay.
Is over by all of the rest of the electrical equipment, and it will be obscured by the porch. I don't think I have anything further to add.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? All right. I'll now open the public hearing for this item. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about the application at 541 South Ashley. Kristen, do we have any callers indicating to speak on this application?
There are no callers.
I will close the public hearing portion. Is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion on the application? Commissioner Rockland.
I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 541 South Ashley Street, a contributing property in the Old West Side Historic District, to install a black-on-black solar array in 3 sections as proposed. The work is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the rest of the building and the surrounding area, and meets the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular standards 2, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for roofs, energy efficiency, and mechanical systems, as well as the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines, particularly as they pertain to solar installations.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Rockland, seconded by Commissioner White. Is there discussion on the motion? All ready to vote? All of those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All of those opposed, please say no. All right, the motion carries. Your application has been approved. Please note that you must apply for any required permits from the city before beginning your project. Thank you. Now on to item F2. It's 502 2nd Street. Commissioner Rockland will be recusing himself.
Not there.
Yeah, you got to go all the way out to the
I'll
front.
go around.
Yeah.
Go out here. Hey.
All right.
Thatcher, will you please give the report?
Thank you. There was a late revision today received on this project. I do have the correct slides in the slideshow. They're just tiny little changes as a result of the site visit on Monday, mostly clarifying dimensions and things on windows and trim. And there's a new materials sheet. If anyone wants to see a paper copy, I do have a paper copy here, if that would be helpful. And Anna and Bob already have paper copies, but let me run through this here. This is a two-story vernacular home that features side gables, wide board trim in the eaves, decorative peaked hood molds on the original two-story portion, and a full-width front porch with a stone base, concrete deck, and tapered square columns. We've had a few recent staff approvals, including a new garage roof, replacing the house's aluminum siding with cementitious siding, and installing new storm windows. The site's on the southwest corner of 2nd and West Jefferson Streets. And the applicant is seeking HGC approval to construct a 172 square foot second floor addition on top of a single story rear wing. The application packet was very thorough. I'm just going to walk you around the house here. Let's see, this is facing east, so this is the north elevation here on the side. The siding replacement was approved by staff, and that's because when they pulled the aluminum off, these boards have 100,000 little nail holes in them. That plus the condition overall of the wood, which was brittle and quite poor, and because non-original siding can be replaced with non-original siding if the condition underneath warrants it, there is a certificate of appropriateness for replacement with cementitious siding in the same reveal. It's a 5-inch reveal. The trim would also be cementitious. This is the back of the house, which is very visible since this is Jefferson Street here to the left. Everything that you're looking at is from the period of significance. There have been no additions after 1944 on this house. You know, this little porch was probably rebuilt, but all of the floor area is from the period of significance. Walking around now, this is the south side of the house. This is where the addition is proposed to go. It would sit right on top here. And this is a historic window, but it would be moved over because there's a little extra section in here. Let me see if I got a better picture of it. There. This is a different wall plane than this. And they needed to get this corner, this bearing wall, to put the addition on. So this window will get slid over. There are a lot more photos coming, so this will make a little more sense in a minute. This is looking down the south side of the house. That tree is very conveniently in bloom right in front of the house. And then there was a lot of information submitted by the applicant in 1899. You see, this is a 2-story square with some 1-story wings on the back, much of which became 2 stories at some point by 1908. And then by 1931, they had torn down this 1-story room on the back and constructed a garage and a little back porch. There is evidence of what the house originally looked like, things like a 9.5-inch thick wall on the interior, which indicates that this probably used to be an exterior wall. and some remnants of framing and wallpaper in odd places. Here it was with aluminum siding, and this was taken down last year to get, and the change in the appearance of the house I thought was quite dramatic. There's information on other restoration work that they'll be doing, and replication of the siding in cementitious and the trim. Here's that little connector. You can see better here how we've got this two-story block and then this little piece, and then this wall pops out from the other one. Okay, if you need to see any of these pictures, I can reference them, go back up there later. Here is rendering showing the addition, which is here. You can see that the trim from that shed roof on the one-story wing is kept to help differentiate it. And there are two windows that you can see visible here. This one is centered and at the same height as this guy over here. I believe that they are the same dimensions. And this square here mirrors this row of piano windows on the first floor. But you can see that the wall has been inset here in order to distinguish it from the original and to keep this rear corner of the house distinct. Okay, that's the existing site plan. Garage is over here. This is where the addition is going to go. There it is. Existing first floor plan, that will remain unchanged. Here's the existing second floor plan right now. You see that the second floor cuts in here. This is the roof of the one-story wing below. And here it is with the addition sitting on top of that one-story wing. Here's that notch in that I pointed out a minute ago in the rendering that keeps this corner distinct, and it is set in 1.5 feet. Existing roof plan, proposed roof plan on the right, matching the slope of the south gable. Existing on the left, proposed on the right, it's this piece here is the addition. On the north side, you won't see any changes. On the west side or rear, here's the addition. Ties in just below the ridge a little bit and is shorter than the highest ridge on the two-story portion of the house right now. And here are those windows. This one's 30 by 60, this one's 32 by 59. Very close, but not an exact match. Here's that historic window that's getting slid over to be centered on the remaining space here. And the trim that will remain, the roof overhang. There's a lot more information here on materials. This is new. And it's mostly, I can always go back up to this if you want, but it's matching very closely. Let's see, I want to check and see if these are really matching exactly, or if it's, the fascia is 1 by 6. The new fascia will be 1 by 5.5. Frieze board on the second story is 1 by 10, 1 by 8 on the first story. Frieze will be 1 by 5.5 on the addition. So the dimensions of the trim are shrunk a little bit, which is appreciated because that'll help distinguish it, but it will still be very compatible. This is a cutaway of the portion of the addition that you can't really see that's in that notch. I've already read to you numbers 1 and 2 and 5 and 9 and 10. So the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for additions recommend constructing a new addition so that there's the least possible loss of historic materials, so that character-defining features are not obscured, damaged, or destroyed, and considering the attached exterior addition in terms of the new use and the appearance of other buildings in the historic district or neighborhood. Design for the new work may be contemporary or reference design motifs from the historic building. It's recommended to locate the attached exterior addition at the rear or on an inconspicuous side of a historic building. and limit its size and scale in relationship to the historic building. Also designing new additions in a manner that makes clear what's historic and what is new. It's not recommended to lose character-defining features or design a new addition so that its size and scale are out of proportion, thus diminishing the historic character. It's appropriate to place a new addition on a non-character defining or inconspicuous elevation and limiting the size and scale in relationship to the historic property. These are from the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines. And to place new walls in a different plane from the historic structure in a subordinate position to the historic fabric. It's appropriate to limit the size and scale of the addition in relationship to the historic building so it does not diminish or visually overpower the building or the district. The addition's footprint should exceed neither half of the original building's footprint nor half of the original building's total floor area. And I have that in the staff findings. The total increase in floor area is 9%, and in the footprint is 0%. It's not appropriate to design an addition that overpowers or dramatically alters the original building through size or height. All right, let's see. There is one small 1/1 window that would be removed as a result of this one. And in my staff report, I had mentioned that there wasn't a lot of differentiation in the trim and the window sizes. But now that that has been addressed in these new drawings, staff does recommend approval of the application and believes it meets all of the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines and the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ross and myself were on the review committee. Commissioner Ross, would you like to give your report?
Certainly, thank you. So just to start off, generally speaking, so the house is at an intersection at 2nd and, what is this, Jefferson?
Yeah.
So it's in a highly visible location, but due to the placement and scale of the addition, even though it sits at an intersection, it'll be fairly well concealed. So we did, just in terms of like walking around the house, talking with the architect and the homeowner, everything, I guess, in my opinion, seemed to make sense in terms of meeting the standards. Like I said, it's appropriately scaled. It's in a really good location. The materiality is fine. Just the one question that we had with the original proposal is just that the design made at least a few nods so that it was clear that this was actually an addition versus an original part of the house, because the siding is going to be hardy, and then the siding in the home is going to be hardy. So it's going to be kind of all clad in one material.
Speak into the mic.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, so generally speaking, the addition was designed so well to fit in that there were some initial questions in the field around like, okay, how are we going to be able to tell that this is actually an addition? So it sounds like the architect, after that discussion, has made a few kind of tweaks to the design, to really, mostly to the trim and the operation of the windows, to at least, and then that little notch to differentiate the addition as new. In my opinion, I think it meets the standards.
I agree with the staff report and with Commissioner Ross's statements. Again, that highly visible nature, and I would say the site and the way that this house sits, especially in relation to the garage, any other sort of addition, I think would be really difficult. And I think that this was done really well. I think it meets all the guidelines. The only one that maybe, it sits on the hinge of is the setbacks. But I think, viewing from the southwest, from Jefferson, reading that gable, the new gable in the same plane as the existing house gable, it gave me a little bit of a pause, so to speak. But I think, as Commissioner Ross indicated, starting to change the frieze board dimensions and the window dimensions and operations, I think helps. And then the notch, especially from the rear side where you're looking from the driveway from I'm sorry, this side is from Second, the other side is from Jefferson, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
so I
correct.
misspoke before. So from here, from Second, initially, there was, it looks very similar, but I think, looking from the driveway side, which is actually a little bit more visible coming down Jefferson, I think having the little notch in the back where the closet is on the inside really helps distinguish that this is a little bit different from the rest of the house. The main point that the architect wanted to make was that it's compatible, but that you can still start to distinguish. So I think making those changes to the frieze board and the trim is helpful. We had some discussion about the intersection of the roof lines, because as you can see in the image that is on the screen, the eave of the gable of the original does tie in to the eave of the gable on the existing. But that is because you'd end up with a weird roof intersection if you didn't have that, so there'd be more issues. So we really kind of talked through everything, and I think that overall, it's such a small addition to the house. I think it's done well, and I think it meets the guidelines. Would the applicant please unmute your microphone, turn on your video if possible, and provide your name and address for the record? And you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak if you would like to add anything to the staff report.
Hi, I'm Scott Wiedemeyer. I'm applying for this on behalf of myself and my wife Chelsea, who can't be here right now. Don't have a lot to add. Jill, you covered it all. Thank you for being so thorough. I had no idea you were going to prepare so much beyond what we prepared, so thank you. And thank you, Commissioners Epperson and Ross, for coming and visiting the other day. We're really excited about the project. We think we've got a fantastic architect. And I just wanted to maybe add a caveat, which is that the house just really looks awful right now. I've spent a lot of time up on a ladder trying to jam little flashing cards into the holes so that bees don't make a nest in the house over the summer. So it looks awful, and that might give off the perception that we don't care about the neighborhood or the house. And we really do. This was kind of a give a mouse a cookie thing where we thought, what if we pulled the siding off? What would be underneath? And it turned out to be a lot more exciting than we thought. So we're excited about the project, and I'll be here to answer any questions on behalf of the architect who has recused himself. Thank you again, everybody, for considering our application.
Thanks, Scott. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? No. All right. I'll open the public hearing portion for this item. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about the application at 5:02 Second. Kristen, do we have any callers?
There are no callers.
I will close the public hearing portion. Is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion? Commissioner Fortner.
I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 502 2nd Street, a contributing property in the Old West Side Historic District, to construct a 172-square-foot rear addition as proposed. The work is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the rest of the building and the surrounding area, and meets the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular standards 1, 2, 5, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for additions and building site and the Ann Arbor Historic District design guidelines for additions.
Second.
All right, moved by Commissioner Fortner, seconded by Commissioner White. Is there a discussion on the motion?
I just want to comment that I appreciate the thoroughness of the application. It was very clear to understand what was being proposed and to help clarify those distinctions that Commissioners Ross and Epperson were talking about, questioning in the field of all the materials are going to be so similar. How do we know what's historic, what's new? And I think kind of the details of maintaining that single-story form and the roof edge of what this addition is sitting on top of helps also clarify that and give clues to those looking at the new addition.
Agreed. All right. Is everyone ready for a vote?
Actually, I have a
Commissioner Ross?
quick question
Sure.
for Ms. Thatcher. So because the revisions were made kind of last minute, do we need to tweak anything in the motion, or should that cover the last minute revisions?
I think it's covered since I presented them and they were distributed. If you feel uncomfortable with that at all, you can always add as revised into the motion.
No, I'm pretty comfortable.
Okay.
I think we're good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Great. All of those in favor of the motion, please say yes. Yes. All of those opposed, please say no. The motion carries. Your application has been approved. Please note that you must apply for any required permits from the city before beginning your project. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Of course. Right. Now on to item, somebody need to go get David, or is he?
I'll get it.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank
Bob.
you.
On to F3, 1223 Traver. Ms. Thatcher, will you please give the staff report? Nope. Oh,
Did you just go that way?
yeah.
I had a feeling that was going to happen.
Bob did.
Oh, man. I'm going to go this way.
And he's going to come that way.
I'm already back. Thanks for coming. I'll meet you around.
All right, 1223 Traver Street is in the Broadway Historic District. This is the circa 1840s Jacob Armstrong house. It's a 1.5-story Greek revival in the rare hen and chicks form. You can't see the chicks very well in this photo here. It may have been moved from another site on Traver. It was first owned by Jacob Armstrong, who moved to New York, Ann Arbor from New York. Armstrong, his sons and grandsons all worked as carpenters in Ann Arbor. In 2021, the HTC determined that the garage is a contributing structure, and in 2022, the HTC approved an application and a certificate of appropriateness to raise the house 16 inches, add 3 basement egress windows, and construct a rear 150-square-foot addition. The site's on the west side of Traver Street, north of Bowen and south of Pear. And the applicant is seeking HTC approval to move the house 4 feet to the north in order to protect 2 silver maple trees and a black walnut tree, at least one of which is from the period of significance, and probably all 3, and 2, to redesign a previously approved addition to remove a corner inset at the rear corner of the house. So first, we will go through the trees and moving the house. So the applicants can tell you more about this, but when they got their contractors out that would dig out the basement and lift the house and things like that, they said that there was a decent chance that these 2 silver maples along the fence, and then one off in the distance, which is a black walnut, would be impacted by this construction work and possibly may or may not kill them, but may or may not weaken them enough that they tip over. This is one of the silver maples. You can see these are big trees. When I reached around, I could not touch my hands on the other side. And this is the one in the back. This is the black walnut. It's the largest of the 3. There's another shot of it. You can kind of see the trees over the top here. This photo is just included because the proposal is to lift the whole house up, which they're doing anyway, and then to slide it over 4 feet. So it would be, 4 feet closer on this side to the current driveway. Here's a shot from the back. You'll probably recall this from our January agenda, a couple of shots of the back of the house. And then there were more photos of the trees in the packet. This is a photo from 1992. It was in Susan Weinberg and Susan Marjorie Reed's book, Historic Buildings, Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's an interesting photo because you can see that it was taken before this very early shed roof addition, or it shows up on 1947 aerials at least, was removed and rebuilt. And now currently, where it was rebuilt, where this freeze board stops, there is a corner that was exposed when it was ripped off, And that corner was preserved, and there's a little bit of an inset there today. You can probably see it right here. It's this board. That's not a very good photo. Another interesting thing about this is that the front is wood shingles. These are rows of shingles. I don't know if that was original to the house or not, but I don't believe that they're there now, though the applicants can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's just something that I've never noticed about this house before. Here's a slightly earlier photo from 1974. This is a good one because it shows the relationship with the neighboring house. People often think of these two houses together. They weren't built at the same time or by the same person, but they have both been there for a very long time. And, you know, this is a little bit more simplistic view without, you know, fences and the garage is back there. It's just out of the photo. And it's just not very busy. And you can really see the wings on the chicks and the hen. And again, there's that strange shed roof addition that they took off the back and rebuilt. Okay, here's that corner that I was just trying to explain to you. These are photos of that shed roof addition that went across the back. There was another addition here that has already been removed in this photo. And now the whole thing is completely off. And you can see the edge of the chick here where they've rebuilt the corner. And it's inset right here in this photo. All right, now we're moving on to talk about the corner inset. This is one corner inset that exists. This is the current floor plan, and this is the new floor plan. Hang on a second, I got to go back. New main floor plan. And this is the proposed. So this is the existing notch at the back of the chick. And right now, the approved plans show another notch here, but it's been pulled out and squared off. Here's the existing notch. This is the existing floor plan. This is the proposed without this wall being inset. I think it was 6 inches or a foot on the original application. Existing east elevation proposed, you see that the foundation is higher. Here it's very low to the ground. Here it's up 16 inches. Here's the existing north elevation. And here's the proposal for, there would still be some differentiation between the roof lines here because this addition is really just a square, and though this wall plane would be the same, there would no longer be a notch here, there would be differentiation in the roof style and height. This is the back of the house. This is what it would look like from the back. South elevation, there are no changes. So let me go through the standards, and then I think I have some comments for you. Number 1 says that a property will be used as it was historically or be given a new use that requires minimal change to its distinctive materials, features, spaces, and spatial relationships. I have already read 2, 9, and 10 to you. Let's see. So from the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, it's recommended to design new additions in a manner that makes clear what is historic and what is new. It's from the guidelines for building site, it's recommended to retain the historic relationship between buildings, landscape features, and open space, and to preserve important landscape features, including ongoing maintenance of historic plant material. Also not recommended is locating new construction on the building site where important landscape features will be damaged or destroyed. From the guidelines for district or neighborhood setting, this is very similar. It's recommended to retain the historic relationship between buildings and landscape features of the setting. From the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines for additions, it's appropriate to locate a required addition on the least character-defining elevation, keeping it subordinate, designing an addition that makes it clear what is historic and what is new, And from the Ann Arbor guidelines for landscape features, it's appropriate to retain and maintain mature trees, hedges, and other historic plantings, and to retain the historic relationship between buildings. I'm sorry, I think I said that like 4 times just now. It's not appropriate to remove mature trees, hedges, and other historic landscaping. All right, zooming back up. Really like this photo. I just found this one today. Let's see. So if your decision, one of my staff findings was that if your decision had to be made between moving the house or losing the trees, that would be tough, because it's pretty clear that neither moving the house nor losing the trees is recommended in the guidelines. The applicants do say that it's possible to leave a crawl space under that portion of the house where the tree's roots have already crept underneath the rear wing. This isn't ideal for them because they're going to lose basement space, and the whole point of this was to get a larger finished basement out of the work that they want to do. But leaving a partial crawl space along that south wall would leave the tree roots undisturbed, and would be in keeping with both the standards and both sets of guidelines. For the revision to the addition, I'm a little bit wishy-washy about this one, because you can kind of see it a couple of different ways. So this addition that you see in the back here was from the period of significance. The new addition that was inset a little bit is in roughly the same footprint as that. So that is something I think that should be maintained. It's possible, however, that that is done through the change in the roof line rather than the back corner, and we don't know if this is exactly where that back corner should go or not. So I think that this one is a little bit of a harder call. It would fit the guidelines better to keep an inset here and to keep this corner, since that corner's been there for a long time. But again, this was a rebuilt corner, and we're not sure that it's in exactly the same place. Thus, there's a little bit of ambiguity here. So I do think that the already approved corner fits the standards and guidelines better, but I think that there's room to think about it the other way and use the roof line as a different way to interpret the back of that building. So that does conclude my report, and I'm going to just buzz back down here to these photos because I really like them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. Myself and Commissioner Ross were on the review committee. This one is, I think it's a little bit tricky. I think it has been noted. I think the main thing that we were looking at on the site is, that relationship of the trees to the existing house. The trees are really close. Better in the front on at the true hen and chicks portion of the footprint, and it gets narrower in the back as you go further back to some of the later additions. Those really pinch, and I'm a little bit concerned even how I think the window wells would be installed in general on the site with the setbacks to begin with, because it doesn't seem like maybe there's 5 feet in the pinched portion, but it is really close to the property line. The foundation, of course, on the hen and chicks portion is a stone, a cut stone or rebel stone foundation, excuse me. And then it does at the little portion in the back that was rebuilt, that is a block foundation, and then the rest of the house is also a block foundation. So that's clear that's a little bit more modern, a little newer. It's also kind of looking at the relationship between if the house does move over 4 feet, what kind of relationship that might have or change that feeling from, as it moves a little bit closer to the garage, pinches the driveway a little bit more. I think it's interesting because there's a fence that goes between this house and the house to the south. So the photo that we have on the screen is, it looks like there's much more space there. The trees look smaller. But now with the way that everything's grown and the life of the trees, everything, it is really tight on that side. So it's hard to get a good reading, I think, of that portion of the house being that close to some sort of property line where there is much more room. I guess if you go back to maybe the driveway side.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You can kind of scroll through here. Where there is, quite a bit more space. So that relationship, 4 feet, I think there's probably enough room here to say, okay, if it did move over 4 feet, how much of the spatial relationship would be changed? I'm not really quite sure of that. I think that's something that's good for discussion. In this photo, I'm standing roughly 4 feet from the house, approximately. So just kind of trying to look at that and kind of evaluate that. So I don't know that I have much more to add to that. There are some questions that I think that I've had after we left that we'll bring up to the applicant about, how is the existing foundation going to be treated once the house is moved over, what the plan for that is. That's a discussion we didn't really get into. I'll pass it on to Commissioner Ross, see if you have anything else to add.
No, I don't really. I think that was a very thorough reporting of.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I
right.
need to. It's right in my face. No, not really. I think that was a really thorough reporting out of just the general questions that we had while in the field. So.
Okay. Would the applicant please unmute your microphone, turn on your video if possible, and provide your name and address for the record? You'll have up to 5 minutes to speak if you have anything you'd like to add to the report.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, my name is Tammy Stevenson. My husband, Mitch Gerzak, and I live at 1223 Traver Road. We've come before the commission before trying to figure out different ways to remain in our house and add some living space, since we have 2 little girls that are pretty active and growing. And the sort of solution we came up with in January was to lift our house and dig a basement, excavate the Michigan basement that exists under our original portion of the house, and then excavate under the crawl space that exists under the addition that was added in 1992. After we received approval for our application to lift and excavate to add a basement, the house lifter was able to come to our house, and he had concerns about how close the trees are. They are about 5 feet away, so that fence is the property line, and it's a 5-foot setback on the side. And so maybe more like 4 or 5 feet away from the house. And he wasn't so concerned about them dying so much, but that they might fall over. And so subsequently to that, we had some arborists come over, and one that we spoke to also wasn't that concerned about the trees dying, but and then we also were trying to come up with the solution so that we could still proceed, and we were thinking of doing a crawl space on the side, and another arborist said that would be sufficient to help protect the trees and not dig so close to the trees. But then as we were talking, that removes a significant portion of basement space and livable space for us. And so the house lifter also suggested, after we've lifted the house, moving the house 4 feet away from the trees, which would, also preserve the trees, but then allow us to put in a complete basement. So we thought that was a more elegant solution to our tree problem. and it preserves the utility and space of the basement. And in some respects, it probably preserves the life of the trees a little bit because they are so close to the house that there's concerns about branches and other things living really underneath a really big tree. So might keep them alive a little longer and not having to cut them down for other reasons. With respect to the corner inset, I think Jill showed photos that we obtained from the previous owner showing that the shed roof addition was completely removed in the early 90s, and the addition was added with a corner inset that is apparent. And so we were kind of hoping to not have to do another corner inset in the foundation. It's more costly, and we don't have to lose that space. And I guess our thinking along that lines as well is if the previous owner had extended the addition the way we want to, they wouldn't have been told to add another corner inset. They wouldn't have had to do 2 corner insets to their addition. Just one would have been probably required at the time in the early 90s. So I guess, yeah, we're just asking to continue the addition that was added in the early 90s and not do 2 corner insets essentially. Yeah, so I guess that's it.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? I did want to, I guess, ask, because we did not talk about it at the, whenever we met you on site, what is the plan for the existing foundation walls once the house is moved, and the new foundation walls? What's proposed to make up the rest of that 4-foot corner, especially on the front of the house, and what would happen to the existing ones? Are they, and I guess if you can just give us a description.
Are you talking about what's going to happen to the stones underneath?
The stones, and also, so if they're picking the house up and then shifting it over 4 feet, then you have open basement. So in theory, I guess they'll be building new walls, but then the existing ones will be removed, but now we have a new foundation type under the existing contributing resource that was stone that is now a block wall. Is it exposed? Are they salvaging some of the existing stones that were used for that house? How is that work being treated and handled?
For the existing stones, we're going to save them. And I think we would like to put in like a stone wall, maybe on the side, like a retaining wall. I don't know if that would be allowed by the commission, but that was one of the thoughts that my husband and I had to repurpose the stones that were in the basement. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking about the exposed basement after they lift the house, but under the original portion of the house, it's a circular foundation, so it doesn't go out all the way to the corners. It's kind of like a crawl space on the edges of the original portion, and then a circular Michigan basement that's about 4 feet in the middle. So there's not going to really be like an exposed drop, I guess, if that's what you're asking about with the original portion.
Yeah, so
After they move it, there's earth underneath, around the edges. It's not a complete hole underneath the whole original portion.
okay. Any other questions, commissioners?
I guess, yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you. I need to articulate it, I guess, but I just wanted to hear some more about why like 4 feet was the right number, and what the arborist or the house mover said, like, or I guess more the arborist, like, obviously that 4 feet was a number thrown out there. Moving it further would probably be better, but why will moving it 4 feet make a difference for the trees?
I'm assuming this is based on the experience of the house lifter, and I'm sure they've had to dig near trees before, but they're already 4 feet away from the house, so I guess like moving them 8 feet is good. That's what he recommended. One arborist that came out wasn't even concerned about cutting right up to the trees. So I don't think that the trees are necessarily going to be like damaged by the cutting so much. The house lifter was mainly worried about them falling over. So I think if just moving it so that the house is now going to be like 8 feet away from the trees, that's sufficient enough to make sure in the house lifter's point of view that he's not concerned about the trees falling over.
And then, all right, I gotcha. So we're just basing that on like one arborist and the house mover basically have a consensus that 4 feet is the right way to go. Can you explain again the order of operations? Is the house moved before you're digging?
Yeah, so
Okay.
he said that they'll lift, move, and then start digging.
Okay. That's all my questions.
And yeah, I guess to add, like, this would not be a solution if we probably weren't already lifting to begin with, but since we're already lifting, moving them is not as much of a, moving the house is not as much of a ordeal.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question, just to follow up on Commissioner Epperson's question, because I wasn't necessarily 100% clear. So the foundation that's there currently, the stone, will not be reincorporated into the new foundation. It's just going to be kind of just used somewhere else on the site? Is that?
Yeah, I think, at least when I was initially talking with Jill, I don't even know, a year ago maybe, the idea is you don't want your foundation to look like it's original. You want somebody to be able to tell that it's new. So we did not plan to incorporate the stone into the foundation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was a prior approval.
Okay.
That when they asked to get the house raised up,
Gotcha. Okay.
they also got approval to put in the new foundation.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
So it's possible that neither of you
Okay.
were there at that
Yes.
meeting.
So the whole foundation is, in the previous application, has been approved to be replaced in entirety?
Yes.
Okay.
As
Okay.
part of lifting it.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
That helped clarify a lot of questions.
It's not just lifting it and then digging down
Yeah.
a full
Right.
basement
Right.
as well.
Right, right,
So
right.
that's what was approved before.
Okay.
Right. And I guess just another, to follow up on another one of Commissioner Epperson's. It's more of a statement, less of a question, that the site plan isn't to scale. So, it is a little hard to get a good idea of like moving it 4 feet, like how it will really interact with what's going to happen there. I mean, I guess just eyeballing it and like, okay. But yeah, so I guess it's more of a observation than a question. I don't know.
I have another question I'd like to ask. I'm curious if there was any thought into just keeping the historic portion of the house where it is and only moving from the 90s back addition, because that is the part that's closest to the trees, and I would have less concern about moving that portion from a historic district standpoint.
I don't think it's possible to just move without taking apart the house? I guess I'm not understanding what you're asking.
I think you are, because I think you're exactly right. You would have to do some major demolition to separate the two. But I just was wondering if it came up, and doesn't sound like it did. Thank you.
I had the same question, actually, so,
I mean,
yeah.
that's the first thing I thought of.
That might be more than, I think that'd be tricky for a number of reasons. I don't know if you can tell that we have some stairs, grandfather stairs that are connect the old portion and the new portion. Yeah, it'd be quite a, that might be more than we could afford.
I think I'm good.
You're all good? Okay. All right. I will now move on to the public hearing portion for this item. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about the application at 1223 Traver. As a reminder, public comment may be made by calling 877-853-5247. This information is also displayed on the video feed and meeting agenda. Don't think that we have any callers. So I will close the public hearing portion. Is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion on the application? No takers. Commissioner Fortner? Are you volunteering?
Sure.
No, okay. Thank you.
I move that the commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 1223 Traver Street, a contributing property in the Broadway Historic District, to 1, move the house 4 feet to the north in order to protect 2 silver maple trees and a black walnut tree, and 2, redesign a previously approved addition to remove a corner inset at the rear corner of the house. As proposed, the work is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the surrounding resources, and meets the Ann Arbor Historic District design guidelines for all additions and residential landscape features, and the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular standards 1, 2, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for district neighborhood setting, building site, and additions.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Fortner, seconded by Commissioner White. Is there a discussion on the motion? Commissioner Rackman.
I had a question for staff. Can you just explain, if we move the building, I mean, what types of character defining features are being changed, and is there a danger that it's no longer a contributing structure? I mean, could it go that far if we move the building 4 feet? I'm just curious, like, what are we at risk of being up against here?
I don't know if it would lose its significance by moving it 4 feet. I don't think it would. That hadn't even crossed my mind.
Okay.
I'm just a little more concerned about the very clear guidelines about retaining historic landscape relationships, the distance between the house and the trees, and quite frankly, the distance between this house and the neighboring house, which I think is a significant part of the view shed, the landscape. And those trees have been there, you know, you could see them in those 1974 shots. Let me get you back in there a second. These are the 2 maples. And back here, I'm not sure if that's the walnut or if that's the way back walnut. There's a ginormous one way in the
it's
back
actually-
corner of the lot.
I think that's those 2 that are really close
I don't think
together.
that's the silver maples. I think one of those must be the walnut.
Oh.
I think the one,
Anyway.
the way that the picture is viewed, the one right at the front edge of the house, they're the tip of the roof is the middle.
Oh, this one?
Tree. Yeah, my screen turned.
Okay, okay,
And then the one right next
Next
to it
to
in the
it.
photo in the back is the walnut.
okay, okay. That would make sense because all 3 of these trees are roughly the same size. Anyway, so I don't think that the site would, the house would lose its significance if you moved it 4 feet. But I do think that those relationships would be changed. And you have to decide whether that's too much of a change or whether it's acceptable in order to allow more living space below grade in the house. And if you believe you have enough information about the trees and how this would actually benefit them. I mean, certainly it would benefit them.
Right.
It's a little bit, I wish that I had asked Tammy and Mitch for something in writing about,
Yep.
from the arborist, although they got different reports from different people. But I mean, certainly it would help the health of those trees.
So I guess I would even ask the question, so there's a difference between destroying the relationship and diminishing it.
Jen, can you talk into your mic?
Sorry.
I'm
So I was saying, to me, there's a difference between destroying the relationship between the landscaping, the house, and then the house next door, and just like a slight kind of diminishing the relationship. I wouldn't say, I mean, it's just so hard to eyeball and try and like, without like a sight line, where I don't know, to figure out like in real time, you know, what this is going to look like in reality, just 4 little measly feet.
Yeah.
You know, it's not changing the orientation of the house. It's not moving it from the actual parcel to another parcel. It's not pushing it backwards. It's literally just scooching it over a little bit. So I would say, you know, it probably will diminish it somewhat, but I wouldn't think it would destroy it. So I'm comfortable with that aspect of it. Seeing as though it will actually preserve the trees. Yeah, so I'm comfortable with it.
I'm for it because it will help the trees. The trees would be better off having more room. And the client will be better off with the approval.
I think I'm reading from this that the lot is 66 feet wide total.
Go down to that.
So that would make this a 6% difference, if that makes anybody feel any better.
Yeah, there's a site plan in your packet. I'm sorry, it's not in the slideshow.
Oh,
There is
okay.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the guidelines, building site, identify, retain, preserve, recommended. Retaining historic relationship between buildings, landscape features, and open space, I think. And then preserving important landscape features, including ongoing maintenance of historic plant material. Not recommended locating any new construction on the building site where important landscape features will be damaged or destroyed. I do think there is risk with those window wells in general of destroying the trees for sure. Obviously, I think new work would do that, which is why we're discussing it. But I think Commissioner Ross's point about diminishing versus destroying, I think is a really good one. 4 feet, and I think the question about why 4 feet was really important because it does seem on this lot, like 4 feet really doesn't seem like a lot, especially it's for the effort to lift the house, but then move it, saying that it's not much effort. I think I was a little bit concerned about what happens with the foundation, but because I missed the previous application, I think that takes away a lot of my concerns if that has already been approved by the commission. I think the location that it's being, just shifted 4 feet in one direction on the much larger open side of the lot, I don't know that is really going to have much of a change in the features, especially now that the trees are older and grown. Things seem really compressed, so some of that view shed might be, I think, balanced out again a little bit. So I'm moving more in support of the application, I would say.
More questions?
Yeah.
Any more questions? Through.
Does anyone else have any other comments, questions, discussion? Commissioner Rothman?
Sure. I mean, there's the question of the notch in
Yeah.
as well. And I think that, especially with those photos where you can see that very clearly that shed from the period of significance was removed completely. And like was pointed out, we don't really know exactly where the corner is. And so it would be hard to say, we didn't know that before, but now we have new information. And like was also pointed out, the roof lines will be different, which will at least be some acknowledgement, but I don't even know if any, without knowing exactly where that corner would be, I think it's hard to say that you need a notch there, or an indent. So I think that it makes sense what the owners are asking for to me, to just not have a corner in your foundation that you don't need. And so that part of the application makes sense to me.
I agree. Okay, are we all ready for a vote?
Yes.
Sounds like it. All of those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
All of those opposed, please say no. Right, the motion carries. Your application has been approved. Please note that you must apply for any required permits from the city before beginning work on your project. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now on to item F4, 224 South Main Street. Ms. Thatcher, will you please give the staff report?
Yes. All right, 224 South Main is in the Main Street Historic District. This is a one-story commercial building that features enameled steel panels over brick, over part of it, and a deeply recessed entry door with tall glass display windows. It was originally a three-story Italianate structure which dated to 1860, the dry goods arm of the Mack and Company department store that moved here in 1898. The building is listed as vacant in 1942, except for Christian Mack's Insurance Company on the second floor. And by 1942, the upper two stories had been removed and the enameled steel panels and recessed entry installed on 224. This was first occupied by the Dixie store in 1943, and the Art Moderne facade installed on 226 for Cunningham's Drugs. Cunningham's moved to this address by July of 1942, and from their previous storefront at 216 South Main. In 2013, the HDC allowed an awning and enameled steel panels in poor condition to be removed from above the storefront at 224. So 224, when I'm talking about that, is a separate storefront here, and 226 is the Cunningham's building. It's all currently used by the Parthenon Restaurant. All right, here's another photo. This is where the enameled steel panels were allowed to be removed in 2013. They were in very poor shape and a lot of water was getting in there behind them. You can see that there's been some brick patching in the past. This is a storefront that is believed to date to the period of significance. It's very 40s in style. And it would make sense that that was there as part of the 1942 remodel. The Art Moderne on the corner, the aluminum or steel bands here are obviously part of that storefront. The windows here have been shortened. They used to go a little bit closer to the ground when it was a drugstore. But otherwise, most of this first floor is original on here. On the back of the building, on the West Liberty side, is this last bay next to the alley, and proposed back here is to replace this door and infill brick with a new storefront that would serve the end of the building back here. This has obviously been altered a couple of times. These are different bricks than These right here, these have also been infilled, but at a different era. And then the bricks on the top third of this bay match the rest of the common red brick on the building. The window openings are consistent with what they looked like in 1942 with Cunningham Drugs. I have a couple more shots from afar to give you a sense of what's going on around it. This is the only remaining bay of a building that used to stretch all the way across this white one here that became a Woolworths later, and all the way to the corner. It was just a mammoth 3-story building. And on this side, we have the alley, and then shorter 3-story buildings, but also 3. Actually, was 3 or 2? Yeah, I think they're 3. Those are 3. And then across the street is another formerly Italianate building that was about the same mass. This one has had its windows squared off, similar to the tall bit of the original building over here that's left. And these, like all 4 buildings at the corner of Maine and Liberty at some point got their windows squared off. They used to all be arched Italianate windows, which I think is very interesting, but that was the fashion in the teens or 20s. And here's a view looking down Main Street, past the neighboring building that is still 3 stories to the one in question. So the proposal here is to add 3 floors, 2 of which would be full floors above the footprint of the building, and the fourth floor would be a partial setback story back here buried in the corner of the building. We've been through the history of the site a couple of times at working sessions, but just very quickly, you can see that this is the original Italianate building. This is a 1906 photo. And by the 1920s, look, there's the squared off windows that I was talking about. Let more light in and be more fashionable. It had a stunning row of storefronts at one point. These are very elaborate and interesting. 1930s here on the top. This says 1939. I'm pretty sure Cunningham's didn't open until 1942, but that's okay. They're both during the period of significance. And you can see the Art Moderne style with these enameled steel panels running all the way around the side of the building, all the way to the back. And there was some sort of a storefront back here on the last bay. Kind of hard to see what it was, but it's definitely got at least a window and a person door there. Here's an early 70s photo on the top. And the Parthenon Restaurant. By 1990, they had shortened these windows in the front that I mentioned already. But you see that this sort of marquee is still intact. Some more photos. This is a good one showing the double door entries on the front corner of the building. Back alley is back alley. You can see some openings that have been bricked in, but there's not much significant going on back there. And moving on to renderings. These were from working sessions. Here we go. These now are getting into some renderings of the addition on top of the Cunningham Drug building. Here's the view from the street. It has a clear glazing element here at the corner. And there's a lot of information on the materials in the packet. I'm not going to delve into that. If you have questions, you can ask the architect about those. A lot of glazing, letting a lot of light in there on the second and third floors. This is a clear railing up on a roof deck. I think I saw some greenery up here. And here you can see the partial fourth floor. You can see that enameled steel panels, not enameled steel, steel panels that are modern materials that resemble enameled steel panels would be restored to the first floor. And we have a new storefront Here on the Liberty elevation, these openings are maintained, as are the openings in the front and the front doors and the trim there. Site plan is a rectangle. That's pretty straightforward. Existing first floor plans, I'm not going to dwell on the floor plans, but they're here if we need to talk to them. There's a stairwell and an elevator proposed to be placed inside of the Main Street storefront, which has been revised. I'll show you that in a second. And then we have our second and third floors and the fourth floor here, which is the partial floor. And then it looks like there's a mechanical screen on top of that with some mechanical units. We have elevation drawings. Here's 224 South Main Street, which has a new storefront in it. All of this remains, and panels would be replaced here. And then overhead, we have the new building and glazing, and here you can see that fourth floor that's set back. The south elevation and the view from the back from the alley, which you actually wouldn't see because there are buildings in the way, but you might get a little bit of this on an angle. Existing materials have been laid out very nicely in the application, and proposed materials include the steel panels. This is the new storefront on Liberty, and we have a new storefront on Maine at 224. There's information on the metal panels and window frames. Here's the metal cladding plan for the first floor for the Cunningham section. They, in some detail, drew over the historic photographs to figure out what the panel pattern would be, and then to replicate it with modern panels. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different around these windows, but really, that alone would just do wonders to restore the historic appearance of this building. There's a lot of information on attachments of panels. We're not going to go through in detail, but I can flip back to them if you want to see them. Here we have the new storefront on Liberty that is proposed, and the new storefront on Main Street that is proposed. I touched on this earlier, but since this is a contributing architectural feature from the period of significance, I don't think that it is appropriate to replace this storefront with a shallower one. I realize that this is very deep and takes up a lot of floor area on the inside, but that is the historic character, to have these very large 40s display windows. There aren't a whole lot of these left on Main Street. I can only think of two. Window cut sheets were included. All right, let me run through the standards and guidelines. I read to you 1, 2, I didn't read 3. Each property will be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or elements from other historic properties, will not be undertaken. 4 says that changes to a property that have acquired historic significance in their own right will be retained and preserved. I have read to you 5. 6 says deteriorated historic features will be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature will match the old in design, color, texture, and where possible, materials. Replacement of missing features will be substantiated by documentary and physical evidence. And I have read 9 and 10 to you. From the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for alterations or additions for the new use, it's recommended to design additions to roofs, such as residential, office or storage spaces, elevator housing, decks and terraces, or dormers or skylights, when required by the new use, that they are inconspicuous from the public right-of-way and do not damage or obscure character-defining structures. It's recommended to design new additions in a manner that makes clear what is historic and what is new. Also recommended is considering the attached exterior addition in terms of the new use and the appearance of other buildings in the district. Design for the new work may be contemporary or may reference design motifs from the historic building. In either case, it should always be clearly differentiated from the historic building and be compatible in terms of mass, materials, relationship of solid to voids, and color. Also recommended is designing additional stories when required for the new use that are set back from the wall plane and are as inconspicuous as possible when viewed from the street. Not recommended is designing a new addition so that its size and scale in relation to the historic building are out of proportion, thus diminishing the historic character. Also not recommended is constructing additional stories so that the historic appearance of the building is radically changed. From the guidelines for district or neighborhood setting, it's recommended to design and construct new additions to historic buildings when required by the new use that shall be compatible with the historic character of the setting in terms of size, scale, design, material, color, and texture. From the Ann Arbor Historic District Design Guidelines for all additions, it's appropriate to place a new addition on a non-character defining or inconspicuous elevation and limiting the size and scale in relation to the historic property. Also designing a new addition in a manner that makes clear what is historic and what is new. It's not appropriate to design an addition that overpowers or dramatically alters the original building through size or height. For additions to historic commercial structures, it's appropriate, when required, to design additional stories that are set back from the front and side wall planes and are as inconspicuous as possible when viewed from the street. Also locating a rooftop addition to be inconspicuous when viewed from the street. It's not appropriate, some of these are kind of redundant, I'm not going to read that one. Not appropriate is designing an addition that adds a full floor at the street wall of a historic commercial building without stepping back. And finally, from National Park Service Preservation Brief 14, they had a lot of additional guidance on designing a new exterior addition to a historic building. The new addition should be simple and unobtrusive in design, and distinguished, differentiate new from old. Should not be highly visible from the public right-of-way. A rear or other secondary elevation is usually the best location for a new addition. Construction materials and the color of the new addition should be harmonious with the historic building materials. The new addition should be smaller than the historic building, subordinate in both size and design to the historic building. And the same guidance should be applied when designing a compatible rooftop addition, plus the following. A rooftop addition is generally not appropriate for a 1-, 2-, or 3-story building and often is not appropriate for taller buildings. A rooftop addition should be minimally visible. Generally, a rooftop addition must be set back at least 1 full bay from the primary elevation of the building, as well as from other elevations if the building is freestanding or highly visible. Generally, a rooftop addition should not be more than 1 story in height, and generally a rooftop addition is more likely to be compatible or only if it is adjacent to similarly sized or taller buildings. Okay, that concludes the design guidelines and the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines and standards. Let me cruise all the way back up here again. Okay. Yeah, these are good. So just to be clear, the 1-story building that's on the site now is from the period of significance for Ann Arbor's historic districts, and it does retain its integrity from that time. And it's therefore a contributing historic structure, and its character, materials, and architectural features must be maintained. It's a unique example of art moderne architecture in Ann Arbor, of which there are few remaining examples. No changes are proposed to the corner storefront and main entry, which is appreciated. No changes proposed to the footprint of the building. The current floor area is 5,304 square feet, and the proposed floor area is 13,500 for an increase in floor area of 254%. And I've already gone through the Preservation Brief 14 information. So while the work to the exterior of the historic building is commendable, staff believes the building addition and the replacement storefront at 224 South Main are incompatible with the existing building based on the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines and guidance offered by the National Park Service in Preservation Brief 14 for additions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thatcher. Commissioners Ross and myself were on the review committee. Commissioner Ross, did you want to start, or do you want me to?
Certainly, thank you. Let's get this. So, yeah, I basically agree with the staff report. of course, starting off by commending the applicant around the proposal or their effort to bring back the metal panel signing on the historic exterior walls, historic buildings' exterior walls. But, as we're sitting and we're listening, essentially all three guidelines, what to include the Secretary of Interior standards, the Ann Arbor guidelines, as well as the National Park Service guidelines, the things we're hearing consistently when it comes to additions, we're hearing that additions should be subservient. Rooftop additions should set back from the walls of the original building. Additions should be properly scaled. Do not add additions to one-story buildings. So just throughout all three sets of guidelines, over and over, we're hearing that what's being proposed here just isn't hitting the mark for being appropriate in this with this project. So generally speaking, in my opinion, it's not meeting the standards. So that's all I have to say. And
I agree with staff's report and Commissioner Ross's comments. On the site visit, of course, this is a extremely well-known, obviously, corner of Ann Arbor. It's Maine and Liberty. It's like one of the corners in Ann Arbor, I would say State, and Liberty is the other one. It's a very, very highly traveled area. People know this building really well. I think any kind of addition on this building is difficult to sort of design around without, it's obviously extremely visible. So on the site visit, we were really talking about that, what it would be to add 3 stories on this building as it is already, and how that could potentially just change the dynamics of that corner and just how visible any design is and what the height, differentiation is. As you look in some of the drawings, that it looks like, this building is going to be a little slightly higher than the building immediately adjacent to it. And then there's another addition or rooftop portion that's set back a little bit more on top of that, but the railing is right up to the front. And while there are the 3-story buildings on every single, corner across the street and adjacent, most of those, I would say all of those are still within their historic contributing status, historic character. So the addition that's proposed is very different. And that's not to say that it's, that the materials are inappropriate or whatnot, but I'm not quite sure that the design is appropriate with the existing building and the way it is. So we can, I think, get into some of that a little bit further, but I would say that that is my initial undertaking with this project. Our initial perception of the project. The applicant is here, so if you'd like to come to the podium, state your name.
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, this building originally, in 1906, it was a 3-story building.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 1920, it was a 3-story building. 1930, it was a 3-story building. And in 1939, became a single-story building. So what they were just doing, I think, was just getting ready to restore it back to being a 3-story building. And so for me, they were looking at the height of the building to be the same size as the building right next door.
And we can get further into discussion. I'll
Sure.
just make a point about that. In some of the working sessions, we did discuss the contributing structure, which is the single-story Cunningham's Drug building. So that one.
That's 1939.
Right, but that is what was deemed the contributing historic resource
Oh, you're
by
saying-
the
okay.
review committee, or by the,
Let's finish the public hearing real quick,
exactly.
then we can get
Okay.
into discussion. Thank you.
the applicant. Sorry. You can come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and if you'd like to add anything, of course, please do so.
David Nims, House of Black Architects, 100 North State Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan. I want to thank everybody for their time. I know we've been here before. I know we've been doing this for a little while. Jill, I thank you for your thorough report. I just want to make a couple of quick statements. We do feel like we are complying with the Secretary of Interior standards, specifically items 3, 6, and 10. And I want to refer to page 23 of the packet, where we have a blown-up detail kind of outlining what that profile of the building would be. We've talked in the past about the structural modifications that happened when they turned it to a one-story building and they modified that corner and they tweaked foundations. And the general footprint of the building being rather narrow. So to make a viable addition, having to utilize that entire footprint to get the floor area proper to make it commercially viable. The blown-up addition there does indicate both the wall profile and the column profile at the base. We are proposing a 3-inch setback to a reveal channel that would add another 4 inches of reveal in compliance with a portion of Preservation Brief 14, adding that extra layer of tension between the old and the new. We are also then, to the glazing face, proposing recessed glazing units that will add an additional 9.5 inches. So at the columns to the glazing face, which is predominantly the upper story face, will be roughly 1 foot 4.5 inches. And from the wall plane to the glazing face will be roughly 1 foot 1/2 inch. So we haven't gone into thorough detailing of all of that, but we have been making a considerable effort to try and pull that back as far as structurally feasible without compromising the integrity of the structure. The second floor plane will be constructed above the existing roof and above the original second floor that the current roof is constructed above. So the building would be able to be removed and restore the height and scale to this one-story portion in the future without compromising anything whatsoever. Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be the extent of what I wanted to just take a second to point out based on the staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions. I did see that in the staff report there was a question about how we're going to adhere the panels to the brick, and if we would go into the mortar joints, we would go into the mortar joints. We've attached furring strips into those mortar joints to preserve those brick faces and then apply the metal panel to those furring strips. So I'm here to answer more questions. Do I sit down now? Do I stand up?
You can stay there. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? I'm sure the person. Commissioner Rapp.
Sure. I have a few questions here. Oh, let me get my, okay, I have a few questions here, David. But I guess just the first one, can you explain like the program, I guess, if it's known, of what will people be accessing in the Liberty storefront and then also the Main Street storefront?
The Main Street storefront is currently planned to be the access for the upper stories. So whether those be commercial or residential, we are looking at the two full floors as commercial and potentially that upper fourth floor as partial residential that would have access to the roof. The elevator would allow for the businesses or the commercial uses to also have a private patio space up there. The Liberty Street entrance is really something that came out of our discussions in our previous work sessions. There's not necessarily a plan for it at the moment. It would go in and possibly be a future separate entrance for the residential to be different from the commercial space off of Main Street.
Okay. So there's no current plan for either of those storefronts to be used as like retail space? They both would be access space for either the upstairs or for the first floor?
Correct. I believe that is the current status of where those lie. Now, that I think that is flexible as we go forward, and the plans trying to reflect that nature. The way we've where and how we've located the stairs, some slight modifications to the restrooms on the first floor are all kind of centered around that.
Okay. Okay, now I have some questions about the design. Can you explain, I guess, two things? Explain, in the previous versions we saw, this was not as tall as the neighboring building on Main Street, and now it does appear that it's actually taller than that building. I guess, please explain the thinking there, and then also, you've heard about the storefront, the 40 storefront that is historic, and you're proposing to modify it. So I guess those two things, I'd like to hear more about the thinking behind it.
So with the height, we really wanted to go above exactly what's existing today. So that kind of drove some of that floor height up to where we started the second floor. And consequently, the additional floors up above, moved up in conjunction. When we first came before you guys, we had aligned it with the building directly to the north of us, but just through that extra development and trying to preserve exactly what was there on the ground floor, everything kind of rose up a little bit higher. The client also had a desire to make this a green and very sustainable building, and the addition of the green roof on the top required a little bit more depth or height on that upper level. So we were trying to keep, before the railing starts to that roof line, that green roof line, to be just about even with the existing building to the north of it that was historically previous to the modification to the building where the cap was kind of set to. Again, the storefront on Main Street, we're proposing leaving the outside face, so no modification. There are 3 knuckles kind of as you go back, and it weaves in and out. So the thought there was, again, due to the limited nature of the floor plate itself, if we could pull that stair and that elevator core up slightly, but leave the first 2 knuckles of the 1940 storefront, that might be a compromise that we could work to with you all.
It appeared that on maybe the very first project you showed us, the Main Street facade was pulled back quite a ways. Am I remembering that correctly, or?
I think the very first one was a restoration of
yeah, that one right there.
The Italianate facade.
That top picture looks like the facade is back. Is that?
I think
what's going on there?
I think potentially it's just the way the view is. We're out to the building edge. We're still at that 45, cutting across to where they put new structure in at the corner.
Okay.
We're doing masonry walls there. It might just be how it reads with the shadows from the windows being inset. There's extra detailing and framing around those windows to try to capture some of the aesthetic and insets created in historic windows. So I think that's probably part of what's reading
Okay.
there.
All right. And then just, I guess this rendering is good. I don't see it in this rendering, but this is sort of a small detail, but it looked like there was a wall separating the private patio from the public patio, and I'm not seeing it here, and I saw it on the floor plans. Is
Yeah.
that?
It was just a delineation line to say that there might be some sort of small screening that occurs that wouldn't be part of the building per se, but set on top of the patio space so they could have some flexibility in how it gets used.
Like an 8-foot wall so that you can't see one for the other?
It might just end up being a row of arborvitaes or some sort of vegetated screen to provide some visual privacy at that upper level.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions? None right now? Okay. I will open the public hearing portion for this application at 224 South Main Street. Public comment may be made by calling 877-853-5247. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. In order to electronically raise your hand, please press *9 on your phone. Kristen, do we have any callers?
There are no callers.
Okay. I will close the public hearing portion. Is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion on the application?
I can get to it.
Commissioner
I'm
Quijano.
scrolling, sorry. Almost there. Okay. I move that the Historic District Commission issue a certificate of appropriateness for the application at 224 and 226 South Main Street, a contributing property in the Main Street Historic District, to construct 3 additional floors to the building, install replica metal cladding on the first floor, install a new storefront at the west end of the building on the south elevation, and install a new storefront at 224 South Main. As proposed, the work is compatible in exterior design, arrangement, texture, material, and relationship to the surrounding resources, and meets the Ann Arbor Historic District design guidelines for all additions and for additions to commercial structures, and the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings, in particular standards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10, and the guidelines for additions, windows, and district neighborhood setting.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Quijano, seconded by Commissioner White. Is there discussion on the motion?
I had a question for staff,
Sure.
if I may. 2 questions. One is the preservation brief. I read through that, and it was extremely informative and helpful, particularly in this project. And I suppose I was reading it and then thinking about it in terms of the standards and guidelines, and could you explain how, we talk about the standards and guidelines, that's in the bylaws. Is this, what is the preservation brief, and how does it relate to the other tools that we use to make decisions?
The preservation briefs come from the National Park Service, come from the Secretary of the Interior via the National Park Service, and they're supplemental materials to better explain the guidelines that they publish for all properties. There are probably 30 of them or more, and they get into specific topics where they feel that more guidance is needed. We haven't used them a whole lot, I think in part because we have a lot of residential properties and because we have design guidelines that are in addition to the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines. But we have used them for things like steel windows to get more information and more guidance on how to go about replacing or restoring those. And they're also considered guidelines. They're legit Secretary of the Interior's guidelines. They're just very topic specific. And when you read it, you probably noticed that it has more narrative than a typical guideline, but it also has things that look like typical guidelines laid out sort of in summary. And that's some of the language that I put into the staff report. So you are able to use those as Secretary of the Interior's guidelines if you think they're applicable.
Great explanation, thank you. The other question I had is, I'm just trying to jog my memory. There was something with the Art Moderne facade where, did it go up and down? Was there a change to the height of the parapet, or am I misremembering something?
I remember that conversation.
I was trying to look at the photos and I couldn't see an example of one versus another, so then I was thinking that I was remembering something incorrectly.
Okay, so it's shown in the renderings as straight across.
Maybe David knows. You
Yeah,
know
David
this
might
building
know.
better than anyone.
Yeah, from all the research we've done and the documentation we've found on the building, it was straight across.
Okay.
There did appear to be some inclination that the columns maybe weren't going to be exposed as they are today, but the photographs clearly show what they built. So we have not found anything that deviates at all from the roughly 22-foot, I believe, parapet height across the entire structure.
Thank you. I'm good, yep.
We did, if I can add, discuss at some of the HDC meetings, the variation of some heights of the cornices up at the top. And, we tried to do that a little bit, but not to try to take away from anything that had to do with kind of the horizontal nature of the Art Moderne facade of the one story, and kind of accentuated almost with a vertical expression up above that was more repetitious, to be defining against that one-story piece to help highlight it.
Any other comments?
I guess I'll just add one more thing, and maybe this relates to what Commissioner White was saying, is just to read number 4 of the Secretary of Interior Standards again, which says changes to a property that have acquired historic significance in their own right will be retained and preserved. So is that the standard that says that, yes, there's been many changes to this property that happened during the period of significance, but this particular change acquired historic significance in its own right, and so therefore it should be retained and preserved?
I would agree with that statement.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, and I guess this is going to staff, just to confirm, this building in this iteration has been called out as contributing in the survey.
Yes, it has been.
Okay, yeah, so to me,
It's been
that's the baseline.
contributing all along. I mean, throughout time, it's been, when it first came out, it was contributing.
Yes, there was a contributing structure here that was 2/3 demolished,
That's right.
and now we have a new contributing structure
But-
that is
but the thing
still
about
from
it
the
is,
period of significance.
You have to look at it as you're restoring it just back to where it had 2 stories. If it started off in 1906 with 3 stories, 1920 with 3 stories, it had more time as a 3-story building than it has as a building since 1939. If you put time on it, so I would think if it's been much, it probably, $1906. In 1971 it changed, in 1990 it changed.
I think the guideline number 4 that was just read by Commissioner Rockland, I think is clear in, I think establishing, and also with the survey, establishing this single-story building as the contributing resource that we're reacting against right now is critical. I think the other piece about what you're making, Bob, or the point you're making, Bob, is that while this was a 3-story structure at various points historically, it had different iterations. Italianate, it changed its windows, it had different patterns. So I think in the working session there, and initially there was a design that kind of restored one iteration of that building. So that brought up to us as a commission the question of which resource is really the one to preserve or to reconstruct, and that itself brought up an issue of like which is the thing. So I think, I don't know, to me it's a little bit less of the 3-story in total, but I think right now as proposed in its design, the things that I'm reading as far as the majority of the guidelines talk about step backs from the building facade, not overshadowing the contributing resource. And if I look, I think for me, the most significant things to look at in this design and maybe the previous iteration of this design, which is very similar to working session number 3, there was a lot more consideration about stepping back and playing from that front wall facade that I think massing-wise became almost more appropriate or more compatible with how you might read some of those piers along the facade on the lower story, that it gave a little bit more room for that single-story building to, I think, read as its single-story. I'm looking at page, I'm not sure which sheet it is. 20, no, sorry. 19 in the submittal packet. that bottom image. It broke up the long plane of the glass and aluminum or metal panel that is being proposed currently in the design. And I think while you're stepping back now in this current design, it's really minimal, and that's not something that is really, I think, legible on the building scale itself. So I think, and even another portion in the submittal in front of us today is that flat plane, when I look of the angled curtain wall that goes straight up. So if I, jump forward maybe to view 1 on page 21, I see the pretzel bell facade where it's rounded off, and then I see another glass pane, and that almost to me starts to compete with the pretzel bell building itself. And the scale that I read as the pretzel bell, or keep calling it the pretzel bell building, but this, single story, what was Cunningham Drugs, where it's kind of an elongated facade. Now the building is reading much more vertically, and I think that's a big change in its massing and scale. So that starts to break down a lot of the guidelines that we're looking at, and where I think it's not compatible in its design.
If I can just ask for some clarification.
Sure.
You're referring to working session 3?
Yeah.
Because I believe, and I was not present for one of the working
Correct.
sessions, I had a prior engagement, so another person from my office was here at that presentation, but the request was made from the planning, or from the HTC Commission to restore the 45 that we had shown from working session 2. So that was,
I think it was a question about
Okay.
why it was like that, and, in the other one, maybe it was more compatible or not, but I think it was a question about why there was a change. And for me, I think that angle, the way it's depicted today on the proposed design, is competing a little bit more, especially reading in the full plane.
okay.
And maybe it's just that view that was chosen to be displayed, but
But their first session that they came to us, there was a setback from Liberty and Main Street. With the one that was brick, there was a setback.
I think you're right. It was a while ago, so I need to amend that statement that I made, David. But I believe we were also modifying that entire storefront on that side to bring it down and be recessed behind the still intact Arbor and Cladding panels at the corner, and that was part of that because we were redoing a lot of structure in that first iteration.
I mean, that was the first session. Then we kept moving the goalposts until we had this one, which is the fourth rendition. And now we kind of moved the target, saying that now you want it to be a single story.
I'm not saying I want it to be a single story. I'm saying I think
In
that
1939, it was a single story.
Right.
But we've been looking at 3 stories from day one on these work sessions. And I mean, it's one of those things that you look back in time and in significance that we have is 1939, as you're saying. But when they brought it in, they probably were looking at 1906 and 1920 and 1930. And then they gave us a setback when they first came in the door. And then, matter of fact, the third one is kind of a different look as well. And this is our fourth project that they've come in with. And now we're thinking single story. I mean, we keep moving the goalposts.
I don't think anyone's saying single story.
Oh, okay.
I think that the question is that what's proposed compatible with the single story contributing structure? To me, that's the question
Well, the most
of what we have
compatible
on
one
the
was
guidelines.
the most compatible one was the session one.
Do
They
other
had
commissioners
brick-
have any
they had
comments?
brick
With that
building,
statement,
but the rest of the neighborhood has brick building. And,
But that, wasn't that giving a false sense of history,
well,
Commissioner?
no,
Right.
well,
Correct.
I mean, it was a couple of things that were different on this building. The building had new windows. It didn't have the old windows. So if you looked at the building, 2 stories up, it doesn't look like the rest of the buildings. Because the rest of the buildings have old windows, I should say, older looking windows since 1939. These are 22 windows. Tinted. I mean, a whole lot of things are different.
Okay.
And, I guess I would just say at the end of the day, right now, we're looking at this design that's put in front of us. I mean, in my mind, the design sessions, it's never like a guarantee. It's
No, I
somebody's
agree.
putting a design in front of us, asking for our input, we're providing it, but that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, hey, you're going to get your stamp. At the end of the day, what we're looking at right here has got to meet the standards in order for an approval.
What about your session one? How does that look to you?
Well, we're
It's
not,
page 11. Look at page 11.
right, but we're not reviewing session 1.
No, I'm just saying,
It was,
uh,
actually, I'm going to let somebody else speak, because I've made some comments, but.
I'm
Well, we
I'm
have-
pretty
If there's
set.
other
I
commissioners
feel
that-
pretty ready.
What was it?
I feel pretty ready with
Okay.
moving on.
Does anyone else have any comments, or are we ready to vote? Or discuss
Just,
another
I mean,
issue?
I don't know, this probably isn't a very helpful comment, but just, we, as Ms. Thatcher said, we often deal with a lot more residential type projects, residential scale, single-family homes, and even in those properties where it's at a corner, those are always, or often, the most challenging properties because they're highly visible from almost every angle. And then here, we're at a corner again, and it's a more urban setting. In one regard, yeah, it would make sense at this corner for this fourth out of all the 4 corners of this intersection to stand its ground and join the other buildings in stature with multiple floors. But I think again, it's challenging to do it in a way that meets and complies with the standards and guidelines. And all the working sessions, I commend the design team for coming and working with us. And I think I'd hope it were helpful conversations. We didn't solve everything, but there was definitely evolution in the design, and in some ways, I think you did hear the feedback that we were providing, but I don't think we're there just yet. So, in my opinion.
I agree, Commissioner, and you're saying this is a very challenging site. I will say that particularly what's been done with the first floor, the historic part, as a restoration, notwithstanding the Main Street storefront, but the metal panels, it's looking at it, it's very inspiring, and it would be great to see that built. But obviously, we have to look at it as a whole project. I think that the fact that it's taller than the neighboring building really confuses me. But that's maybe something that I first noticed, but I just want to get back to the staff report where we're talking about the preservation brief. And I think that I didn't necessarily have these in my head before reading the staff report, but if you look at part 8, it's hard to it's hard to see how a addition like, any addition would be possible here, or at least any 2 or 3 story addition, because it says, the addition cannot be highly visible from the public right of way. The addition cannot be subordinate in size, or the addition should be subordinate in size and design, or design to the historic building. The addition should be minimally visible. The rooftop addition should be set back at least 1 full bay from the primary elevation, and the addition should not be more than 1 story in height. So, with that extra explanation from the preservation brief, it just seems that the standards become much clearer as to what is possible here. If we are saying, the staff report, to be fair, also says that it does do certain things from the preservation brief, but of course, you have to meet all the standards, right? Not just some of the standards. So the design is distinguished from, in design and materials from the historic building. It's certainly that. Construction materials are modern but harmonious. And this one, adjacent buildings are currently taller than this one, and the resulting building would be similar size to adjacent buildings. So that's maybe one that it's not quite doing. It's almost doing.
But the first session, it did meet that standard. If you look on page 11 and you look at the building,
Well, it was more than 1 story in height.
yes. And all our sessions, there were more than 1 story.
Yeah.
Ready for a vote?
Can I ask a clarifying point, just of order? So the motion on the floor was to approve, correct?
Yes.
If that doesn't pass, there needs to be another motion.
No. If that motion fails, we don't make an additional motion. It just doesn't pass, so the work is not approved.
Okay.
Yeah, all of our motions are worded in the affirmative.
Okay. I think we might want to table this for the next working session, maybe address some of the things that we've heard tonight and make some adjustments. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that's appropriate to do or not.
That's up to the commissioners. If there are changes that can be made within the next 2 weeks to get into the next packet, that's at their discretion. If this design is not tweakable, then they'll probably just take action tonight.
Okay.
Can you do that? Can you think you can come back with a design in 2 weeks? And I think we can table it.
I think there's been a lot of good conversation. I don't want to, take the past working sessions and get rid of kind of where that led us to, but I think I did hear a couple of considerations that I think we might be able to accommodate in the next 2 weeks.
Ms.
I
Badger,
recommend that we table.
I have a question.
It's like.
So if we deny-
question. It's tabled.
I understand. Commissioner Ross?
Pardon me.
Sorry, so if we deny this, that still enables the applicant to come back with a new design, correct?
No, but he has to pay another fee. That's what we're going to avoid. We're going to avoid the fee.
Oh, wait, I think
That's correct, Commissioner
Well-
Ross. If it's denied, a new design may be submitted, but it has to be substantially different than the current
It has to be
design.
substantially different. So if he comes back with something that's significantly different and we pass it, it's fine. If it doesn't come back significantly different, we won't pass it. But he has to do it within the next 2 weeks.
Sorry.
Wait, I think you,
Go ahead.
Are we talking about 2 different things there? Were we talking about 2 different methods there?
Yeah, Commissioner White's talking about whether or not there should be a motion to postpone this to the June meeting,
Right. As opposed to
as opposed to
voting
taking action
tonight and
tonight.
then,
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess is the commission amenable to postponing? Do we need to make a motion to do
You would
that?
need to make a motion that passes to postpone it to the June, let me give you the date. June 9 HDC meeting.
So
So-
procedurally, somebody could make that motion.
I make a motion
that-
that we table 224, 226 South Main Street application until June 9th. Is there a second?
Motion moved by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Willis. Is there a discussion on the motion?
I mean, I guess I'm fine with it if that's what the, if
Yeah,
that's what the
I
design
think
team
we'll
wants to
vote,
do.
so
No, it's up to him if he
it sounds like
Well,
you would be open to, or
I
you,
mean,
Just have the vote.
Yeah.
well,
I think it's about not having to come back in the future with something. When we talk about substantially different, there's adjustments and some modifications. We heard, we study the height a little bit closer to see if we can't drop that down slightly. We can
or maybe it has to be just one story that
we
we
can
see.
study the store, but that would be significantly different.
That's what
well,
they
so you
have.
could come back in 2 weeks with still this is where I think the question, the difference lies. You could come back with some modifications to what's proposed currently,
Right.
and the design shows that you've, maybe heard some of the comments that we've made or looked at the guidelines a little bit further, and it might be substantially different, but I think it's still within the realms of what's being proposed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Thatcher. Or if you think, that you're going to need more than 2 weeks in order to do that, to submit it and come back, and you think that it's, feasible to just go ahead and really change the design, then you could wait. What I think, just one other clarifying point, is if the motion is denied in either way, then to reapply again to do an application, it would definitely have to be substantially different.
Right.
So that, I hope that
Right.
clarifies for you.
I think it
so-
does, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I recommend that you talk to Jill Thatcher, and, because she's just taking notes and got the information. That way you have a good handle on what needs to be done,
Mhm.
and then submit that.
So-
All in favor? What?
The question, I think, is,
We have a
If the
motion on the
commission-
table.
the motion on the table is to postpone the application. If commissioners feel like that is reasonable, or if they would like to see additional changes to the application, if that would, make any difference in their thinking.
Right, like the level of, or the amount of significant change that's needed in our minds to meet this, to be compliant, is that exceeding what's allowed in a postponement
Right,
of this application?
correct.
I don't think you can exceed what's allowed in a postponement.
I mean, like, I'm trying, yeah, I don't, I'm trying to,
Yeah, it would be a
You know.
redesign. I mean,
yeah.
and it's just up to you guys if you want to entertain that or not.
We can vote.
All in favor?
All of those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 All of those opposed, please say no.
No.
Okay, the motion carries. So your application has been postponed
Okay.
to the June 9th meeting?
June 9th. So, David, I will need revisions uploaded into Stream
Mhm.
by Thursday, May 26th.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Now, on to item G, new business.
We have a bunch of new business tonight. First up is the Ann Arbor Sustainable Energy Utility presentation. Thea is here. She's here. We can see her on the Zoom. Hi, Thea.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
She's from the Office of Sustainability in City Hall and would like to talk to you about SEUs. Take it away, Thea.
I am. I don't think I can share my screen yet, though, which would be great.
No, can you, does it give you the option to make Thea a co-host?
Let me take a look. It does.
Perfect.
Okay, Thea, you're a co-host.
Great. Here we go. Can you all see that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much. And good evening, or almost night now, commissioners. Thank you for the chance to present. In our time together tonight, I'm going to provide a brief overview of what a sustainable energy utility is and how it could operate in Ann Arbor, and then some next steps that we're looking at right now. As background, Ann Arbor has set an ambitious goal of achieving zero climate pollution by the year 2030. To understand how to achieve that goal, it's important to understand where our climate pollution comes from. So locally, 40% of all the pollution, known as greenhouse gas emissions, come from building electricity usage. And then nearly 2/3 come from the building electricity usage and natural gas that's used to heat and cool our buildings. So given this reality, we know that solutions to reducing local climate pollution necessitate finding pathways to achieve a clean electricity supply and then support the transition away from fossil gas and heating to clean electricity. As we look for ways to improve the reliability and energy mix of our energy supply, it's important to understand the energy landscape in Michigan. Ann Arbor has what is known as a pre-Foot Act franchise, which means that DTE, the incumbent utility, has the right in perpetuity to provide power to the city. However, Foot Act franchises are not exclusive, so the Michigan Constitution protects the rights of cities and villages to create their own municipal utility. This can be done either via a taking or what's called a condemnation and buy out the incumbent utility and their infrastructure, or via the creation of a supplemental utility. To date, every community that has started their own municipal electric utility within Michigan, with the last being Zealand, which was originally formed in 1902, did so by starting a utility from scratch, so when service was not widespread. And you can imagine why. Standing up a full set of poles and wires to directly compete with an existing utility is an expensive proposition, as is buying out their infrastructure through condemnation, which means you require the infrastructure that's often in poor condition. But what if we created a complementary community-owned energy utility that provides electricity from local solar and battery storage systems installed in homes and businesses in our community? What if that community-owned utility provided 100% clean, reliable, locally built, and affordable electricity built right here in our community? This utility would give residents a choice for where they procure their energy, a choice we don't have today. And this would be a parallel utility that would not duplicate the traditional grid with all of its vulnerabilities, but focus on generating clean, reliable, and affordable power now. So that's what the City of Ann Arbor is looking to do via the creation of a sustainable energy utility. As envisioned, a sustainable energy utility would focus first on generating local clean energy. So that's energy that would feed directly into our homes, businesses, places of worship, and community centers. This clean energy would be paired with storage to help improve energy reliability and offered in conjunction with deep energy waste reduction programs to help our residents lower their energy costs and usage, all while improving comfort in those buildings. The concept of a sustainable energy utility is grounded in choice, providing Ann Arborites another way to procure a large portion of their energy, one that's coming from clean, local, reliable, and resilient sources. The sustainable energy utility would enable a lot more people to get the benefit of solar by directly paying for installation on residential and business roofs, carports, and via ground mounting systems. Residents wouldn't be the owner of that solar system. The public or the sustainable energy utility would. Residents would subscribe to purchase their energy at a rate that's based on the cost and the sustainable energy utility's operational needs from the system on their or their neighbors' roofs. If all the residents' power needs are met, the excess generation from the solar panel on their property flows into a battery system. This means that residents could still have power if the big traditional grid goes down. And this is already possible today. Got ahead of myself. Additionally, the SEU would not be limited by current utility restrictions that constrain solar systems and the amount of solar allowed on the grid. So I'm talking about the current 1% cap on distributed renewable generation. Instead, the sustainable energy utility would seek to maximize solar installations, leveraging all viable sunny roof space. Over time, individual solar systems would be connected using microgrids between households and not using BTU's grid. The SEU could offer a series of robust energy waste reduction programs, helping people lower energy demand and improve comfort in their homes and businesses. These services will be available to anyone that participates in the sustainable energy utility, kind of like how current energy waste reduction offerings are available through our incumbent utility. However, we could offer a slew of additional opt-in services that individuals can use to improve comfort, reduce bills, and save energy. These additional offerings can be financed through on-bill finance. And through on-bill finance, the sustainable energy utility is able to pay the upfront costs of improvement, like energy efficiency or electrification upgrades, and residents pay back those costs through their utility bills. This allows the cost of improvements to stay with home as opposed to the resident, and helps reduce the initial upfront costs needed to make improvements. This makes these types of investments much more accessible to a lot more residents, especially low-income individuals and renters, individuals historically omitted from most utility programs. The SEU will also provide support for beneficial electrification, ensuring we have safer, more comfortable, and cleaner homes and businesses, and eventually offer community solar programs so that individuals without viable solar access can still have those benefits of clean energy. I know that was a lot to digest, so let me reiterate what the core of the sustainable energy utility is. The sustainable energy utility is a community-owned utility that focuses on generating local, clean, and reliable energy, doing so fast. It's about leveraging existing technologies and practices, such as solar and storage, to reduce emissions quickly while improving reliability. It's about ensuring that all Ann Arborites have access to solutions to improve comfort, reduce bills, and reap the benefits of a clean energy economy. The sustainable energy utility, as I mentioned before, is about generating locally owned, reliable, clean, and affordable energy. Because we are generating it locally, we don't need a large and vulnerable distribution network. This also means we don't have to worry about buying a lot of poles and wires or about extreme weather events knocking the sustainable energy utility's supplied power out. Instead, we can focus on generating clean, reliable, local energy fast and reducing climate pollution rapidly. To close out, I'd like to share a few examples of how the sustainable energy would work. This isn't meant to be an all-inclusive list, but just some examples for how some of the concepts I discussed could work in practice. So I'll start with an example of a homeowner or a business owner that has good solar potential, but doesn't have the capital or ability to install solar on their roof. In this case, the individual would subscribe or enroll in the sustainable energy utility as a supplemental utility to DTE. The sustainable energy utility would work with that homeowner to conduct a needs assessment, identify potential energy waste reduction, and electrification opportunities. Selected opportunities would be implemented, and the homeowner would have the option of financing those through the Sustainable Energy Utility's on-bill finance program. The Sustainable Energy Utility would strive to create a finance package where the electric bill is the same or ideally less than what is currently paid. Once those are paid off, the resident reaps the full benefits of the improvements. Concurrent with the above, the Sustainable Energy Utility installs solar on the roof. The resident pays their energy bill, as they always have, paying per kilowatt hour of usage generated from the on-site solar system. Any additional power they draw from DTE would then be paid directly to DTE. So the resident would have two bills, the sustainable energy utility bill for the energy used from the on-site solar system, and the DTE bill for power drawn from the grid. Looking at another example, how about a resident or a business that's interested in energy waste reduction and beneficial electrification offerings, but they can't afford solar, or they can't install solar, maybe because they have some beautiful, beautiful trees that block solar access. In this case, the individual would receive an on-site assessment to identify energy waste reduction and beneficial electrification opportunities. The individual would choose which options to move forward with and would have the option of financing them through the Sustainable Energy Utilities on-bill financing mechanism. The individual could also register to join a micro or nano grid where they share power with residents that have better solar potential once a critical number of neighbors have signed up for the Sustainable Energy Utility. The individual would receive two bills like this example before, one for the portion of improvements financed via on-bill finance with the Sustainable Energy Utility, and one for the energy they pull from DTE. A third example is a resident who already has solar in the home or business. In this case, the resident could still take advantage of all of the energy waste reduction and beneficial electrification support offered to the Sustainable Energy Utility and leverage on-bill financing to pay for those improvements. This resident could also enroll for a battery if they don't currently have one. They can also enroll in the Sustainable Energy Utility and sell their excess power back to it so that it can be distributed through those local and micro nano grids I introduced before. So essentially sharing them with their neighbors. The rates for energy being sold to the Sustainable Energy Utility would still need to be determined, but the intent is to get as close to net metering as possible. In this way, the resident is helping to provide power to the Sustainable Energy Utility and to their neighbors. A fourth example is a multifamily rental. In this case, the Sustainable Energy Utility would work closely with landlords and property owners and tenants to customize solutions that meet individual needs. Rental units are eligible for all Sustainable Energy Utility offerings. So that's energy waste reduction, solar storage installation, beneficial electrification, and eventually being tied to a local microgrid. The cities work on green leases paired with on-bill financing tools offered to the Sustainable Energy Utility, help ensure the cost of improvements stay with the building and allow the cost of improvements to be spread over longer periods of time, thereby offering the opportunity for immediate health, safety, and comfort improvements at reasonable cost. And then the final example I'll go through is community solar. In some cases, individuals will not have access to on-site renewable energy generation. In these cases, off-site solar will be installed in common areas such as parking lots, school rooftops, parks, or other shared spaces. Individuals can subscribe to take a portion of this energy to help power their life and their business. In this way, anyone in the community can participate in the Sustainable Energy Utility, even if they don't have their own home or they don't have viable solar potential on site. Individuals that subscribe to the community solar offering pay per kilowatt hour of usage directly to the Sustainable Energy Utility, and then pay DTE for any power that they use from that utility. So those are just a handful of examples of how a proposed Sustainable Energy Utility could work. To find out more, you can visit a2gov.org/A2SEU. If you're interested in seeing the city move forward with an SEU, please register your interest by taking a short 5-question survey that's on the second bullet. I believe you can also access that from the first URL. And if you have any additional questions, please send those to sustainability@a2gov.org. Oops. So thank you so much for letting me run through this on the proposed and our Sustainable Energy Utility, a clean, reliable, locally built, and affordable way to power our community. And I am going to stop sharing my screen and see if we have any questions.
Can I get a brochure? Do you have one at the city hall?
We don't have one printed out, but we do have all this information and more short videos, long videos, an FAQ document is all at a2gov.org/SEU.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Rockland, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. That was a great presentation, thank you. Very exciting information to share. I guess I'm just thinking of how it's relating here, and so my question is, when you're part of the community solar or microgrid, or you've got some off-site battery storage, will, let's just say focus on a house, like a single-family house, will that house have another power line coming to the house and another meter on the outside of the house for the SEU? I'm yelling, sorry.
I mean, it's helpful. You were a little quiet at first, but it all worked out. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it would look like. We're not quite at the stage yet of doing a full analysis at that level. But yes, there would be a separate set of infrastructure that the sustainable energy utility would operate on, which would be separate wires. It wouldn't share a wire with DTE. Likely separate meters. So yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Lots of, I think, really good information, really interesting. I'm curious to see, I think, following up on Commissioner Rockland's question, how it really actually starts to play out and how the infrastructure starts to play into, what we have existing. I think there's a lot of interest in what a new grid can be and what it can look like. So I think this is a really nice presentation. Any other questions, commissioners, comments? Okay, thank you very much, Thea.
Thanks, Thea.
Thank you.
Right. We have another presentation, correct, on the 502, no, on the wrong thing.
Hayden House.
Hayden, yes, I was on
Yeah,
hearings.
no presentation, but in your packet is the Hayden House Study Committee preliminary report. This was approved by the study committee, of whom Commissioners Willis and Ross are members, on April 26th, and it went out for distribution that same day. It went to the state, the SHPO, Michigan Historic Center, the review board, and also to Planning Commission, Historic District Commission, and somebody that I'm not thinking of right now. But it went out to everybody who needed a copy. It's on the website. We've tried to tweet it out, get the word out, because now is the comment period. We've got 60 days. It's going to go to the review board at their May meeting, so that's coming up soon. And we should be getting more information back from them soon.
At the SHPO review board? Or
Yeah,
who's
the State
review
Historic
board? Yeah,
Preservation
okay.
Review Board, yeah. And once the 60 or 74 days is up, I'm not sure which is the local and which is the state waiting period, comments will be considered and incorporated, and then the whole thing will go to City Council, and they will have until, I believe, April 26th, 2023 to consider the report and take action on it, or not take action and do nothing, and then it just ceases to be an area being studied. But I'm not anticipating that that's going to happen. I have no indication of it. So that's where we are right now. If you read the report that was attached in the digital record, please give me comments if you have questions, if things need to be clarified, if you think there are areas that should be improved upon or beefed up. It's a very interesting report, and it's very well done. And I would like to commend the consultant who's been working on it, Tim Boscarino, as well as the study committee, who've given excellent feedback. And and given of themselves to make this a good report. So that's it, unless you have questions.
Okay.
Okay. And if you want to move right on to 537 Elizabeth, I do have a short presentation for this one. This is a request for a historic plaque. And, yep, here we are. Sorry, I went too fast. Okay, this is in the Old Fourth Ward Historic District. Elizabeth Street is across the street from St. Thomas. This is a very cool, very historic house. It's the 1878 Thomas Fitchell House. You can see that it has very rare and unique lattice-type trim with very cool brackets and these open porch posts that are really just like 2x4s that have been hollowed out in the middle, or not even 2x4s, because the trim is so old. It's an Italianate house that's had this added to it at some point. You can see that it has neat hood molds over the windows, and there is decorative scroll work on top of that I think will show up better in a minute. What you're considering, there's a memo in from staff just outlining the ways that it met the criteria, in my opinion, to receive a City of Ann Arbor authorization for a bronze plaque. And if you're not in a National Register district or a standalone National Register building or on the former IHP, Individual Historic Properties list, you need to get that approved by the HDC. Or the other way you can qualify for one is to get an award from the HDC. So this building, 1878, it's very lovely. It has a stone foundation. It has a few modern additions to it. Like you can see, there's an egress window here. I believe it's currently a 3-unit building. A lot of it's intact, though. There is this 2-story deck on the back. But the way I look at that, it's completely out of sight from the street, which is one of the criteria, and it is extremely removable and reversible. Just for fun, the owner added these photos of his 4-car taxi garage from the back, which I just love. I don't know when this was added, probably sometime between 25 and 40, but it's just a neat little building, also very historic. Here's the front. The other non-original feature that's prominent on here is this front stoop. I wish it were painted, but other than that, it meets the criteria for what a new stoop could look like. It's got the correct kinds of guardrails. It's got closed risers. It's got skirting on the sides. It's not pretending to be historic because it's not, and we don't know what it looked like there originally. So that's sort of a very minimal design. And really, staff recommends approval of this application. I think it's a sweet house and very historic and worth memorializing. Also, the owner is the one who would have to pay for the bronze plaque. They're made at Arnett's on a template that we have with Arnett's, and they haven't gotten back to me yet on how much a new one will cost. Last I heard, they were about $275, but that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So
Do you need a motion?
I'm bracing myself for what this one might cost for this owner if it's approved. Yes, a motion would be in order.
I make a motion that 537 Elizabeth get the historic district plaque.
Support.
By Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Rockland. Vote. All those in favor, say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. The motion carries.
Thank you all. That's it
Thank
for new
you.
business.
All right. On to item H, approval of minutes. Did everybody receive the minutes from, was it April's meeting?
I'm good with the
Yes.
minutes.
What was that?
I'm good with
Good? Good? Okay. Minutes are approved as presented. Item I, reports from commissioners. Any commissioners have anything they'd like to share? Commissioner
I
Rock?
do. I forgot that I did, but I do, if I may. So I just have to look at something really quickly. But that electrification discussion that I was planning, the weather was particularly horrible that day. It was like 40 degrees, and it's an outdoor event at the distillery. So it's been rescheduled May 24th. That's a Tuesday evening, 6 o'clock at the Ann Arbor Distillery. So
Great. Thank you.
electrification fans, come out and have a drink for that one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
On
I was-
to,
Oh, I was
Go
just- I was wondering, that it was quite cold that day and
windy.
overcast.
and
Yeah.
Wendy. On to item J, assignments for a review committee on Monday, June 6th at 5 PM for the June 9th meeting. Volunteers.
Jill, I think I can do that one.
Okay. Jessica?
I can do it.
Commissioner Willis, you're volunteering? Okay.
Okay. Jessica and Bev. Thank you. I like it when you all race to
Yes.
be first.
Reports from staff? I didn't see anything in the,
I don't think there's an actual staff activities report because we haven't figured out how to get it out of our new permit
Okay.
tracking stream system yet. We've got a request in for that. We'll see when that happens. One other thing that I want to report is I'm going out on a short medical leave starting next Tuesday. I'll be out for 3 weeks. That will put me back like the day after the review committee meeting. So Alexis DeLeo will be filling in for me while I'm gone. So if you have questions or concerns, or other people do, send them to Alexis. And, she's reachable by City Hall phone or email. And it's surgery on my hand. It's nothing life-threatening.
the dominant.
It's the best kind of surgery. No organs are involved. That's it for staff. Thank you.
On to item L, concerns of commissioners. Any commissioners like to share any concerns or issues? Okay. Item M, communications. I don't believe there were any communications to the HDC.
Nope.
All right, and then on to adjournment. Now adjourn the May 12th, 2022 meeting of the Ann Arbor Historic District Commission.